3000 Years of Longing is the latest film by George Miller, the director of the Mad Max series and the Happy Feet movies. We'll never get tired of that fact. And as a self-proclaimed fan of Miller's, I eagerly awaited its release in theaters. Well, I saw it opening weekend, and it's good. Like, it's not great, but it's good. But there was something I was dreading about the movie in the months following first seeing its trailer. Nothing to do with the actual quality of the movie, but a look. A look of a movie that wasn't going to do well. But when I went to the theater and sat down, that suspicion was all but confirmed. Again, I saw it opening weekend and there was like 3 other people in the theater. Why did I think this was going to happen? Well, the lack of any social media presence didn't help. I saw one trailer online and maybe a couple ads for it in the 3 months before its release. No one was talking about it online, not on YouTube really, not on Twitter. It's like it didn't even exist. This is so surprising since this is Miller's next movie following up Mad Max Fury Road, which is considered a modern classic and one of the best action movies ever made. And the movie to success it is met with crickets. Why? Well, I knew why. It was because of marketing, like I said. Now, I don't know how well it would have done if it actually received a good marketing budget, but something just kept nagging me. Why did a studio pump $60 million into someone's idea and hire 2 extremely bankable stars to be in it, to then just seem generally disinterested in making back their investment? Well, in my opinion, it's because of lack of confidence in the film. It's an R-rated, kind of trippy and at times heavy story where very little in the way of action happens. If they were to market this to like the Marvel crowd who would then not like it, they would run the risk of backlash online, or even worse, low audience scores. They probably then decided to just quietly throw it in theaters, make whatever they could, and then see if it'll fare better with streaming and downloads later. If it turns out it was generally liked in theaters, then it could become more popular after its run. But if it isn't, then they don't have to have that embarrassment of heavily marketing a movie no one cared about. I mean, this didn't have an enormous budget, more so a mid-budget. The scope of the movie at times did signal Miller may have wanted a bigger budget, but regardless, it fell under that category. Lower risk, but potentially lower reward. This signals a bigger trend I've noticed over the years. The slow death of the mid-budget movie. Basically how it went up until the last couple decades is studios used to make a handful of mid-budget movies at a time, make some profit, and then finance the big-budget movies, which would then make the most money. But now the studios would like it if the big-budget movies financed everything. But in order to guarantee a big-budget movie is a success, you need some sort of hook, and that hook is often a brand. It used to be more about the star power, but now it's the brand with bigger movies. There's a reason why 8 of the 10 most successful movies ever made started as part of a bigger franchise. It's because brands are familiar and safe. Like, I don't think people are going to necessarily get tired of Spider-Man movies overnight. Well, where does that leave mid-budget movies? Can't you have franchises with those too? Not as much. Typically, if you're making a sequel, audiences want it to be bigger and better than the last. So unless the whole series is relatively small scale, chances are the sequel is going to up its budget and scale too. The mid-budget movie focuses on a bigger scale story than a low-budget movie, but it doesn't show off the spectacle of a big-budget movie. That's why you see a lot of dramas, comedies, or thrillers in this category. A lot of them are geared towards adults, so they're given an R rating, something that cuts out the most lucrative audience, teenagers. They would typically make a good amount of profit, but even when they didn't, they could make up that cost with other revenue streams.
Well, so what happened was, the DVD was a huge part of our business, of our revenue stream, and technology has just made that obsolete. And so the movies that we used to make, you could afford to not make all of your money when it played in the theater because you knew you had the DVD coming behind the release, and 6 months later you'd get a whole nother chunk. It would be like reopening the movie almost. And when that went away, that changed the type of movies that we could make. I did this movie Behind the Candelabra, and I talked to a studio executive who explained it was a $25 million movie. I would have to put that much into print and advertising, right, to market it, what we call P&A. So I'd have to put that in P&A. So now I'm in $50 million. I have to split everything I get with the exhibitor, right, the people who own the movie theaters. So I would have to make $100 million before I got into profit. And the idea of making $100 million on a story about like this love affair between these 2 people, yeah, I love everyone in the movie, but that's suddenly a massive gamble in a way that it wasn't in the 1990s when they were making all those kind of movies, the kind of movies that I loved and the kind of movies that were my bread and butter.
You see, these were decently risky movies to make, but they were enough fail-safes to still turn a profit. These were also predominantly made during a time when franchises weren't what dominated the box office in the same way they do now. Nowadays, with streaming and digital sales, the at-home economics of movies is just so fractured and minimal compared to DVD sales back in the day that the cost just can't be made up. It's why every major studio is now rushing out their own streaming service, because they're missing out on that piece of the pie. Now it's gotten annoying, so they should stop it. Now, does this mean they don't still make mid-budget movies? No, they still do. But a lot of them either come out during Oscar season or are made by an established director trying to get some sort of passion project off the ground. Can they be profitable? Of course. But can they also flop? Definitely. Which brings us back to 3,000 Years of Longing. George Miller was really free to make any movie he wanted with riding off the success of Fury Road. The movie took home 6 Oscars, made a solid profit at the box office, and is still frequently talked about years after its release. He levied all of that into a single script until one studio decided to greenlight it, but realized they might not make a good amount of profit and essentially just slipped it under the rug. I mean, who knows what could have happened behind the scenes? Maybe the budget wasn't originally $60 million and just ballooned to that. Maybe it went over schedule. I mean, the last couple years haven't been kind to the entertainment industry. Or maybe they just really couldn't figure out how to market the movie to a given audience. Regardless, it's a shame, because these movies were a breeding ground for great ideas, and beefing them up with ample time and money leads to some amazing work. Not all the time, but sometimes. But is there any long-term hope for the mid-budget movie? Well, it's not like they're dead and gone, since award season is where we see a large influx, like I said, and streaming services, despite what helped lead to their decline, often make their own since they're willing to take those risks. I mean, a lot of stories you see in original streaming shows at times feel like medium-budget ideas, since TV shows are often bound by budgets and shooting schedules which are tighter than a blockbuster and forces them to scale back their ideas. In short, medium-budget movies, while they'll always be around in some form, aren't the powerhouse they used to be. Hollywood has set its sights elsewhere and will only occasionally glance at them instead of giving them the full attention they deserve. Will we ever see a comeback of sorts? I mean, I sure hope so, but for now, we can only hope. Because I've been waiting for District 10 for too goddamn long. Hollywood, can you please get to work on that?